In the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia, there are places where the old magic still holds power. Places where the boundary between our world and something darker grows thin. Raven Hollow was one of those places. For over 2 centuries, people have been disappearing in that remote valley. Hunters, hikers, curious teenagers who thought the stories were just superstition. The locals say it's the Bone Woman who takes them, a witch who refuses to die, who's been feeding on souls since before the Civil War. They say she builds things from the bones of her victims. Terrible things, things that walk and watch and hunt. Most people are smart enough to stay away from Raven Hollow, but Alex Rivera wasn't most people. She thought she was chasing a story. She had no idea the story was chasing her back. This is what happened when she went looking for the Bone Woman. And I promise you, after tonight, you'll understand why some legends should never be investigated.
Alex Rivera had built her podcast, Forgotten Victims, on a simple premise: investigate cold cases and unsolved disappearances that mainstream media had abandoned, give voice to the forgotten, and maybe, just maybe, find answers that had eluded everyone else. In 3 years, she'd covered 18 cases. She'd helped identify 2 Jane Does, brought new attention to a serial killer who'd operated in the Midwest during the 1970s, and forced the reopening of a case that had been closed prematurely. She was good at what she did, meticulous, fearless, and stubborn enough to go where others wouldn't. Which is exactly why she was driving down a barely maintained forest road into the mountains of Southwest Virginia on a gray October afternoon, despite every local telling her not to. Raven Hollow had a reputation. Between 1823 and the present day, at least 47 people had vanished in or near the hollow. No bodies ever found, no evidence of foul play, just people who walked into those woods and never walked out. The disappearances followed a pattern. They clustered in groups of 3 or 4, then nothing for years, sometimes decades, then another cluster. The most recent cluster had been 5 years ago. 3 college students on a camping trip, all experienced hikers, all vanished without a trace. Before that, in 1989, 4 hunters. Before that, in 1952, 3 teenage girls. The pattern went all the way back to 1823, when the hollow got its name after 3 women were found dead near a cave, their bones picked clean and arranged in strange patterns. The locals blamed the Bone Woman. According to legend, she'd been a real person once. A woman named Temperance Blackwood, who lived in the hollow in the early 1800s. She'd been accused of witchcraft after several children in the nearby settlement died of a mysterious illness. A mob came for her, burned her cabin, drove her into the deep woods. But Temperance didn't die. Instead, she learned the old dark magic that had been in these mountains long before white settlers arrived. She learned how to preserve herself, how to extend her life by taking it from others, and she learned how to build servants from the bones of her victims. Alex didn't believe in witches. She believed in human monsters, killers who hid in remote places, who preyed on the isolated and vulnerable. She suspected someone had been using the legend of the Bone Woman as cover for over a century of murders, maybe multiple someones, a tradition passed down through generations. It was the perfect setup, a supernatural scapegoat that kept people from looking for a human killer. She'd spent 2 months researching before making the trip. She'd filed paperwork, made sure people knew where she was going, set up automated messages to send if she didn't check in. She'd interviewed descendants of victims, pored over old newspaper accounts, studied maps. She was prepared. Or so she thought. The town of Blackwood Fork, named after the witch's family, ironically, sat at the base of the mountains, population 423. Alex stopped there first, hoping to find someone willing to talk on record about the hollow. She found the opposite. The general store owner refused to discuss Raven Hollow at all, saying only, You seem like a smart girl. Be smart about this." The local sheriff, a woman in her 50s named Patricia Thorne, was more direct. "Turn around and go home," Sheriff Thorne said when Alex explained her purpose. "I've been sheriff here for 12 years, and I've pulled out 2 bodies in that time, both people who ignored warnings and went into Raven Hollow anyway. I'm not pulling out a third." "Only 2?" Alex asked. "The records show at least 7 people have gone missing in the Hollow in the last 12 years. Sheriff Thorne's expression hardened. "I said I've pulled out 2 bodies. The other 5 are still in there somewhere. Now get out of my office." Alex's last stop was the Blackwood Fork Historical Society, housed in a converted church. An elderly man named Ernest Webb ran the place, and unlike everyone else, he was willing to talk, though only after Alex agreed to keep the conversation off the record. "The Bone Woman is real," Ernest said flatly, spreading old documents and photographs across a table. "My great-great-grandfather saw her in 1891. He was hunting deer and got turned around, ended up deep in the hollow right around dusk. He saw her cabin, said it was covered in bones, hanging from the eaves like wind chimes, and he saw her. Described her as tall and thin, with white hair down to her waist and fingers that were too long, like she'd broken them and they'd healed wrong. Your great-great-grandfather was probably experiencing hypothermia or exhaustion," Alex suggested gently. "The mind can play tricks."
"He was a mountain man, Miss Rivera. He knew these woods like his own hand, and he wasn't the only one who saw her." Ernest pulled out a folder thick with yellowed papers. "I've got 17 separate accounts spanning 180 years. All describe the same woman, same white hair, same 2 long fingers, same cabin covered in bones. You can't have 17 separate hallucinations across 2 centuries that all match perfectly." Alex looked through the accounts. Ernest was right. The consistency was unusual. But she'd seen how legends could calcify over time, with each telling reinforcing specific details until they became gospel. "Why hasn't anyone burned down the cabin?" Alex asked. "If everyone knows where it is." "Because anyone who tries doesn't come back," Ernest interrupted. "In 1847, a group of 12 men went into the hollow specifically to destroy her cabin and kill the witch. Only one came back, and he was wrong. Didn't speak, didn't recognize his own wife and children. He walked into the woods 3 days later and never returned. After that, people learned to leave her alone. Except people keep disappearing." "She takes them," Ernest said quietly. "Every so many years, she needs replenishment. Fresh bones for her constructions, fresh souls to keep herself alive. There's a pattern to it. She takes people in groups of 3 or 4, uses them up, then lies dormant until she needs more." "If that's true, she's overdue," Alex said, checking her notes. "The last disappearances were 5 years ago. Based on the historical pattern, she should have taken more people by now." Ernest's face went pale. "Don't go into that hollow, Miss Rivera. She's waiting. She's been waiting. And if you go in there, asking questions, making noise, drawing attention, you'll be giving her exactly what she wants." But Alex had come too far to turn back now. She thanked Ernest for his time, returned to her rental car, and drove toward the trailhead that led into Raven Hollow. The trail was unmarked. Officially, this area was closed to the public due to unstable terrain. Alex had to park on a logging road and hike in, following GPS coordinates she'd marked from old survey maps. The forest was thick here, old-growth timber that blocked out most of the afternoon sun. The underbrush was dense with mountain laurel and rhododendron, creating dark tunnels between the trees. Alex had her recording equipment, camping gear, and enough supplies for 3 days. She'd marked her route carefully and had a satellite beacon for emergencies. Everything was planned, methodical, professional. The hollow itself was a narrow valley between 2 steep ridges, with a creek running down the center. The trees here were even older,
massive hemlocks and oaks that had probably been standing when Temperance Blackwood first came to this place. The air was cooler, damper, and had a smell to it, something organic and old, like rot mixed with earth. Alex found the first bones an hour into the hollow. They were arranged on a flat rock beside the creek, small bones, probably from a rabbit or squirrel, laid out in a geometric pattern. A warning? A territorial marker? Alex photographed them, made notes, and continued deeper. The cabin appeared just before dusk. It sat in a small clearing about 2 miles into the hollow, and Alex's breath caught when she saw it. Ernest's description had been accurate, terrifyingly accurate. The cabin was old, the wood weathered gray, but what made Alex's skin crawl were the decorations. Bones. Hundreds of them hanging from the eaves, woven into wind chimes, arranged in patterns along the walls. Animal bones mostly, deer skulls, rib cages, long leg bones, but as Alex got closer, her professional eye recognized others. A human femur, partially hidden among the animal bones. A skull, definitely human, placed above the door like a macabre welcome sign. The cabin looked abandoned, but maintained. The porch was swept clean. The bones, while old, were arranged with care. Someone was still tending this place. Alex set up her camera on a tripod and began documenting everything, narrating for her podcast. I'm standing in front of what locals call the Bone Woman's cabin, approximately 2 miles into Raven Hollow. The structure matches historical descriptions, including the disturbing decorations of human and animal remains. I'll be doing a thorough search of the area, looking for any evidence that might explain the disappearances. She didn't approach the cabin itself yet. The light was fading, and Alex wanted good visibility when she investigated. She made camp about 50 yards away, in a spot that gave her a clear view of the cabin but kept her at a safe distance. As she set up her tent, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The forest around her was quiet. Too quiet. No birds, no insects, none of the normal sounds she'd expect at dusk. Just silence, broken only by the distant gurgle of the creek. She built a fire as much for psychological comfort as warmth. The flames pushed back the darkness, created a bubble of normalcy. Alex sat with her back to a large tree, her recording equipment beside her, and tried to rationalize what she was seeing. The cabin was real. The bones were real, but that didn't mean the supernatural explanation was correct. Someone could be living out here, someone using the legend as cover for their crimes. A hermit, maybe, or someone mentally ill who had adopted the identity of the Bone Woman. That made more sense than a 200-year-old witch. Around midnight, the wind chimes started singing.
The sound came from the cabin, dozens of bone chimes moving in unison, creating an eerie, discordant melody. But there was no wind. The air was perfectly still, the forest absolutely silent except for that terrible tinkling sound. Alex grabbed her flashlight and pointed it at the cabin. The bones were swaying, moving as if touched by invisible fingers. And in the darkness between the hanging bones, she saw movement. A figure, tall and thin, passing behind the cabin's window. Someone was inside. Alex's journalistic instinct warred with her survival instinct. She should investigate, should try to make contact, should document whoever was living in that cabin. But every fiber of her being was screaming at her to run. The figure appeared on the cabin's porch. Even from 50 yards away, even in the dim light from Alex's fire, she could see enough to make her blood run cold. The woman was a woman, tall, impossibly thin, with white hair that hung past her waist. She wore what looked like a dress made from animal hides, and her arms, hanging loose at her sides, were too long. The proportions were wrong, as if each bone in her arms had been stretched. The woman stood perfectly still on the porch, and Alex knew with absolute certainty that she was being looked at, studied, evaluated.
Then the woman smiled. Even at this distance, Alex could see teeth, too many teeth, filed to points, gleaming in the firelight. "You came asking questions," the woman said. Her voice carried clearly through the silent forest, and it sounded wrong, like multiple voices speaking in unison, slightly out of sync. "You wanted to know about the disappearances, about the missing people. Would you like to see them?"
Every instinct told Alex to run. But she was a journalist, trained to observe, to document, to find truth even when it was uncomfortable. She stood slowly, keeping the fire between herself and the cabin. "Are you Temperance Blackwood?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. The woman's smile widened. "I was called that once. Now they call me the Bone Woman. I've had many names over many years. What matters is what I am, not what I'm called." "What are you?" "A survivor, a student of the old arts, someone who learned that death is negotiable if you know the proper price." The woman took a step off the porch, and her movement was fluid yet wrong, like water flowing uphill. "You're wondering if the stories are true, if I've really been taking people from these woods for 200 years. The answer is yes." Alex's hand moved to the satellite beacon in her pocket. One press and a rescue signal would go out, but the woman's eyes, dark and knowing, followed the movement. "That won't help you, Alex Rivera. My territory extends for miles in every direction. No one will reach you in time. But I'm not going to hurt you, Alex Rivera. Not yet. You wanted to know what happened to the missing people. I'm offering to show you." "Why?" Alex asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because you'll tell the story. That's what you do, isn't it? Tell stories, make sure people are remembered." The witch's smile turned sad, almost wistful. "My victims deserve to be remembered too. They serve a greater purpose now, but that doesn't mean their names should be forgotten." Against all logic, Alex found herself following as the Bone Woman turned and walked into the forest. The witch carried a lantern that gave off a pale blue light, and where it shone, Alex could see a narrow path through the undergrowth that hadn't been visible before. They walked for perhaps 10 minutes, climbing a slope behind the cabin. Alex's podcast recorder was still running in her pocket, capturing everything. If nothing else, if she didn't survive this, maybe someone would find the recording and know what happened. The Bone Woman stopped at the mouth of a cave, a narrow opening in the hillside, partially hidden by overhanging rock. "This is where I do my work," she said simply, and led Alex inside. The cave was larger than the entrance suggested, opening into a chamber about 30 feet across. And it was full of bones. But these weren't random collections or decorations. These were constructions, sculptures, things built from human and animal bones held together with sinew and some kind of dark resin. They stood throughout the cave like statues, human-shaped but wrong, each one unique yet similar, like variations on a terrible theme. "These were the missing people," the Bone Woman said, her voice echoing off the cave walls. "Or rather, they're made from the missing people. Each one takes 3 or 4 donors to complete. They're my servants, my children in a way. They guard my territory, gather what I need, and help maintain the barrier between my hollow and the outside world." Alex's mind struggled to process what she was seeing. The bone constructs were horrific, skeletal frames dressed in tattered clothing, decorated with shells and feathers and stones. But they were also somehow beautiful in their terrible artistry. Each one was different, reflecting the personality of whoever had created them. "You made these?" Alex whispered. "Yes,
I've been making them for nearly 200 years. Each one takes years to complete, gathering the bones, treating them properly, binding them together with the right incantations. They're not alive, not exactly, but they're not quite dead either. They exist in the space between, animated by the small pieces of soul I harvest from my donors. You're killing people to make puppets? The bone woman's expression darkened. Don't reduce what I do to something so simple. This is art. This is preservation. Every person who becomes part of my work lives on, their essence woven into something eternal. They're not simply dead. They're transformed, elevated, made part of something greater than their brief mortal lives could ever have been. Alex's hand tightened around the satellite beacon. You're insane. No, the witch said calmly. I'm practical. Death is the only certainty in this world. I simply learned how to cheat it. The price is high. I need fresh bones, fresh souls every few years to maintain myself and my creations. But I'm selective. I take only those who come looking, those who ignore the warnings, those who think they're clever enough to unmask me. She tilted her head, studying Alex. People like you.
I sent messages, Alex said quickly. People know where I am. If I don't check in,
then they'll come looking, and they'll find nothing. My servants are very good at cleaning up. The forest reclaims everything eventually. The bone woman moved closer, and Alex backed away, her heel hitting something. She looked down and saw bones scattered across the cave floor. Fresh bones, recently cleaned, not yet incorporated into any construction. These are from the college students, the witch said, following her gaze. 5 years ago. I've been working on a new creation from their remains. It's nearly complete. Would you like to see it? She gestured toward the back of the cave, where a larger bone construct stood, still unfinished. It was more elaborate than the others, bigger, with intricate patterns carved into the bones. And in the hollow where its chest should be, Alex could see something glowing faintly, a pulsing light, like a heartbeat. The souls take time to bind properly, the bone woman explained. They resist at first, fighting to maintain their individual identity, but eventually they accept their new form. They become part of the collective, part of my eternal work. Alex pressed the button on her satellite beacon. The device vibrated in her hand. Signal sent. Help was coming. She just had to survive until it arrived. The bone woman smiled sadly. I felt you do that. The modern world has such interesting technology, but it won't help you, child. My territory is well protected, and I have hours to complete my work before anyone can possibly arrive. The bone constructs in the cave began to move. They didn't walk, they flowed, their skeletal forms gliding across the cave floor with impossible grace. They surrounded Alex, their empty eye sockets somehow still conveying hunger, anticipation, purpose. Alex ran. She burst out of the cave and down the slope, her flashlight beam bouncing wildly. Behind her, she could hear the constructs following, not the sound of footsteps, but something worse, a scraping and clicking as bones moved against stone. She made it back to her campsite, grabbed her backpack, and ran for the trail. The forest was pitch black now, her flashlight the only source of light, and the path she'd marked so carefully was impossible to find in the darkness. Something grabbed her ankle. Alex went down hard, her flashlight flying from her hand. She rolled onto her back and saw one of the bone constructs looming over her, its 2 long arms reaching for her. She kicked at it, her boot connecting with ribs that cracked but didn't break. The construct didn't react to the impact, it just kept reaching, kept trying to grab her. Alex scrambled backward, her hand closing on a fallen branch. She swung it like a club, hitting the construct's skull. The impact jarred her arms, and the construct's head snapped to the side, but still it came on. More of them were emerging from the darkness now. 6, 7, 8 bone constructs, all converging on her position. And behind them, moving slowly, confidently, came the bone woman herself.
"Stop fighting," the witch called out. "You're only making this harder on yourself. I promise, once the transformation is complete, you won't feel pain anymore. You'll be part of something beautiful, something eternal."
Alex's hand found a different kind of branch, one with pitch still oozing from a wound in the bark. In her pocket was a lighter. It was a desperate idea, probably wouldn't work, but it was all she had. She flicked the lighter, held it to the pitch-covered branch, and watched it catch fire. The bone constructs recoiled from the flames. Not far, just a step or two, but it was enough. Alex swung the burning branch at the nearest one, and where the fire touched old bone and dried sinew, it caught and spread. The construct stumbled backward, flames racing across its frame, and then it collapsed, the binding magic that held it together disrupted by the fire. Alex grabbed her flashlight and ran, using the burning branch to keep the other constructs at bay. She didn't know which direction was out. She just ran, crashing through underbrush, splashing through the creek, desperately looking for any landmark she recognized. Behind her, the bone woman's voice echoed through the forest. "You can't escape, Alex Rivera. This is my hollow. Every tree, every stone, every shadow is mine. I've been hunting these woods for 200 years. You're nothing but another frightened animal." But Alex had one advantage the bone woman hadn't anticipated. She'd marked her trail with more than just memory. Every 50 yards on the hike in, she'd tied small strips of reflective tape to branches, invisible in daylight, but brilliant in flashlight beam. If she could just find one. There, a glint of silver ahead reflecting her light. Alex changed direction, running toward it, and found the next marker, then the next. She was retracing her path, heading back toward the trailhead and her car.
The bone constructs were still following, but the fire had slowed them down. The bone woman herself had stopped pursuing. Alex could no longer hear her voice. Maybe the witch was confident that her servants would do the job. Or maybe she couldn't leave the hollow, bound by the same magic that sustained her. Alex ran for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes. Her lungs burned, her legs trembled, but she didn't stop. She followed the reflective markers like a lifeline, and finally, she saw the break in the trees that marked the trailhead. Her car was where she'd left it, untouched and blessedly normal. Alex threw herself into the driver's seat, started the engine, and drove away from Raven Hollow as fast as the rough logging road would allow. She didn't stop until she reached Blackwood Fork, didn't feel safe until she was surrounded by lights and people and civilization. Sheriff Thorne was waiting at her hotel. Someone must have alerted her when the satellite beacon went off. The sheriff took one look at Alex's torn clothes, scratched face, and wild eyes and said simply, "I told you not to go." "She's real," Alex said, her voice shaking. "The bone woman is real, and there are bodies, so many bodies turned into these things made of bones."
"I know," Sheriff Thorne said quietly. "We've always known. Why do you think we try so hard to keep people out of that hollow?"
"Then why don't you do something? Send in a team, burn down the cabin, destroy those things she's made."
The sheriff's expression was pained. "We tried. 15 years ago, we sent in a tactical team, 6 trained officers with flamethrowers and explosives. 3 came back. They were traumatized, wouldn't talk about what they'd seen. The other 3 are in the cave now, part of her collection." She paused. "The bone woman has been here longer than any of us. She's part of these mountains now, as much as the rock and the trees. The best we can do is keep people away from her territory and pray she stays satisfied with the occasional fool who ignores the warnings." "That's not good enough," Alex said. "No," the sheriff agreed, "but it's all we have." Alex left Virginia the next morning. She drove straight through to Baltimore, returned her rental car, and caught the first flight back to California. She didn't listen to her podcast recordings for a week, couldn't bring herself to relive what had happened. When she finally did, she found that most of it was unusable. The audio was corrupted, filled with static and strange harmonics that hurt to listen to. The only clear sections were from before she found the cabin. Everything after was damaged, as if something had deliberately ruined the recordings. All except one segment. A voice, not her own, speaking clearly through the static. "Thank you for visiting, Alex Rivera. Come back when you're ready to join my collection. I'll keep a space prepared for you." Alex deleted the files. She told her podcast listeners that the Raven Hollow investigation had been a dead end, nothing but folklore and superstition. She moved on to other cases, other stories. But she couldn't forget. Because 3 weeks after she left Virginia, Alex woke in the middle of the night to find something on her windowsill. A small bone construct, no bigger than a cat, made from bird bones and twigs. It was positioned facing her bed, its empty eye sockets somehow conveying awareness. She threw it away. But the next night, another appeared. And the next night, another. The bone woman was keeping tabs on her investment. Alex moved apartments. The constructs followed. She installed security cameras. They appeared anyway. Always in the early morning hours, always positioned where they could watch her sleep. She consulted priests, shamans, paranormal investigators. Nothing helped. The constructs kept coming, growing slightly larger each time, as if the witch was practicing, preparing, getting ready for the day when she'd have enough material to make Alex herself into one of the bone's servants. 6 months after her trip to Virginia, Alex stopped trying to fight it. She understood now what Ernest Webb had meant about his great-great-grandfather, the man who'd seen the bone woman and survived, only to spend the rest of his life being watched. Once the witch marked you, once she decided you were interesting enough to add to her collection, you were never truly free. The bone constructs still appear in Alex's apartment. She's learned to live with them, these small harbingers of her inevitable fate. She knows that someday, maybe in a year, maybe in 10, maybe in 50, she'll feel a pull, an irresistible urge to return to Raven Hollow. And when that day comes, when the bone woman finally calls in her claim, Alex will walk back into those woods. And she'll never walk out. Because that's what the witch does. She's patient. She waits. She watches. And when you finally come to her, whether through courage or compulsion, whether tomorrow or decades from now, she transforms you into art, into something eternal. The bone woman has been building her collection for 200 years, and Alex Rivera is already part of it. She just doesn't belong to it yet. Alex Rivera still produces her podcast, still investigates cold cases and unsolved disappearances, but she never again travels to the Appalachian Mountains, and she's removed all the episodes that even mention Virginia. The bone constructs still appear in her home. She's learned to expect them, even started photographing them, documenting the witch's slow preparation. Last week, the constructs got bigger, large enough that they're clearly made from human bones now. Alex knows what that means. The bone woman is getting ready, building her framework, preparing the space where Alex will spend eternity as part of a skeletal sculpture in a cave in Raven Hollow. It's not a matter of if anymore. It's only a matter of when. Because the bone woman always collects what she's claimed. Always. And in the deep woods of Virginia, in a hollow where no sane person goes, she's still working, still building, still waiting for her next piece of art to come home. If this story has you checking the shadows in your room tonight, hit that subscribe button for more terrifying tales from America's most haunted places. And remember, if you ever find yourself in the Appalachian Mountains and someone warns you away from a particular hollow, a particular valley, a particular stretch of woods, listen to them. Because some places are forbidden for a reason, and some debts are always collected. Sleep well, if you can.